I'm your host, Tim Niemeyer. Today, I'm joined by Brandon Gentile. Brandon, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Tim, well, I have to say thank you for having me on, but thank you for saying my name truly the correct way. So that's I know we were just joking about that, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, like I said, we were talking beforehand. It's an Italian name. I'm going to Italy this summer. I gotta be proper. I'm on like a 100-day streak on Duolingo, man. I got to do this right. You know what I mean? So, for those who might not know Brandon, he's the head of marketing and PR for Bitcoin trading cards, and he's also the host of a Playable Characters show on YouTube. Great series. I just started digging into that, and I love it. And I know a lot of those people, so it's really cool to kind of start to get some backstory. You know what I mean? So before we jump in, there's a lot that we can talk about, not just Bitcoin, not just Bitcoin trading cards. You have a very interesting backstory. You, if I'm not mistaken, not only were a professional hockey player, but you were also a champion a couple times over, if I'm right. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you kind of back us up before we even get into Bitcoin? Kind of give us that journey. Like, I want to live vicariously.
I can get into it. It's a wild journey. I mean, I started playing hockey as a young kid. All my life here, and Midwest guys here, like we were just talking about, and just playing hockey my entire life, and being in the Midwest a lot, playing in your state, playing in Michigan here, and then I was fortunate enough to play for the U.S. national team, under 17 and under 18 team, and then played at Michigan State for 4 years, and then played in the minors. But during that time at Michigan State, that was the GFC, the Great Financial Crisis. So I was very political in the 2000s, and just very Constitution, founding fathers, stuff like that. So people can kind of probably see which way I generally was leaning during my formative years when I was a teenager and in college. But very into history, very into just the constitutional republic and what made the country what it was, and the military and things like that. And ended up playing. It was was good at hockey, focused on hockey. I was a big kid growing up, so that helped too. And I was very political though. So it was very like, hey, why the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, like why aren't these things like obvious? Why are we not being taught any of them? How come people can't agree on this? How come we're going away from these things? So all those things just made no sense. And then the Great Financial Crisis happened when I was leaving Michigan State, when I was graduating. And that's where I really realized that there was a game being played, and it wasn't red versus blue. It was a state versus you. And that's where it was like, whoa. Like these guys, like one party's starting the ballot, and the other guy's finishing them off. And I was like, that's not how this is supposed to work. I thought there was like two different opinions or two different ways to kind of run the country here. And that's where I got my first foray into, okay, there's something with the money here. And you're leaving school. So like, okay, how am I going to make money? So all those things are kind of going through my head. And then I started into Robert Kiyosaki, which we mentioned offline earlier, who's my probably biggest mentor financially over the last 15 years. Just read all his books multiple times and thousands of hours of listening to him. And what he does brilliantly, like we were saying, is he makes things very simple and for the average person to understand. And we're all average people to a large degree, especially when it comes to 99% of things in life. Like we might specialize in one thing, but there's a term like Nolan Bowerley, who has a great Bitcoin show as well, called The Breakup. He talks about Gell-Mann amnesia. And it's this concept where, and I forget the exact story, but it was, these guys kind of, these experts kind of juking each other, faking each other out basically. And the whole moral of the story of Gell-Mann amnesia is that you tend to, really go after someone or object to what someone says when you're a specialist in that area, or you're an expert. But when it comes to like everything else, people just kind of take it. They just accept whatever is told to them. Like it's, like, oh, okay, well, the expert said it, the sources say, and then people just accept it. They're not an expert. Yeah, exactly. So it's this weird paradox that people put themselves in. It's just human nature. So it's, I was reading in Gold and Silver and Robert Kiyosaki stuff, and he kept things very simple and very easy to understand. A lot of people don't get Robert Kiyosaki or understand him. They're waiting for like, hey, where's the hot stock tip? And I've read so much of his stuff and listened to so many hours of him speak. I can read in between the lines of everything he says. It's really weird. And so that's the world I kind of grew up in, understanding, reading Creature from Jekyll Island and seeing
Oh
all these
yeah,
things. And it really meshed with my worldview growing up of, hey, there's a lot of things broken here. There's a faction of society that just doesn't believe in America, or they believe it's evil, or whatever it might be. And I truly don't think the average person believes that. Some of them more might now, because we've been being brainwashed for so long to think that way, unfortunately. But there's some things going on that we just don't know about, and it's hard to see because there's no transparency in anything we do in life. And that's obviously, being Bitcoiners, that's where Bitcoin starts to give you that transparency in life, and starting to see what's actually happening, and starts to declutter things, and the water's not so muddy anymore. So I'm going through that process in the early 2010s. I'm like, I got to get into real estate as I'm winding down my hockey career. And I played professionally for a few years, and I got hurt around my NHL draft year, so I never ended up getting drafted out of the U.S. program. So I really hurt my groins and everything, and very messy in my college career. It was not what I thought it was going to be either. It is what it is, but we won the national championship in 2007, and which is almost 20 years ago, which is crazy to think about. And so it was just all these things were leading me to where I am now. And so I'm seeing these things happen. I'm reading things while I'm playing hockey. You have a lot of downtime as an athlete because you might do stuff for a quarter of the day or a third of the day, but you're kind of just sitting around the other part of the day. So I'm reading and watching news and listening to books on tape and all these things. And so I'm seeing this game play out of the money being broken, and realizing, oh, wow, the Bill of Rights or Constitution doesn't even matter, right? And we've seen this now play out over the last 10, 15 years. Like, it really does not matter unless anyone stands up or defends them or anything. So the things I thought would kind of protect us, or people could kind of galvanize around the truth, or the things that made America a great place, there's no way you can have that anymore because the money's broken. So that really was my first foray. And then I didn't discover Bitcoin until 2014, 15, 16, but I didn't get it yet. It was kind of like, everyone's got that story of like, I didn't understand it right away. You've got this learning curve we're all on with Bitcoin. And once you see it, if you don't see it, it seems crazy. And once you are absurd. And once you do see it, it seems obvious. And that point right? Didn't come to me. Exactly. Until years later. And it was 2017, 18. I started buying, like once the craze came down from 2017, I started buying in 2018. Yeah. And I didn't truly get Bitcoin though, like I should have, or like you need to, until 2020, when the government started doing things that I never thought they would end up doing, things I read about in history books for a long time on my own, not outside of school. And those were things where like, wow, I never thought America would actually come to where I thought it might. Those my wildest dreams, I kind of thought like, wow, if you go that direction, never thought it would actually happen. And so 2020 takes place, and I'm like, oh boy, like it's on, it's on. So, I had some altcoins at the time as well. Mostly was buying Bitcoin, fortunately, but as an investor in real estate, I was getting into real estate for like 10 years, helping people buy and sell, buying rental properties of my own. And then I started seeing the writing on the wall of like, none of this is safe. This is still all the fiat Titanic. Like, it's all fiat. It's all going to go down. The real estate, all these things are going to go down, and nothing made sense even business wise. So where are rates at? What's the printing? Why there's no merit? There's no accountability. Companies are doing ridiculous things. They're not being punished for it. Heck, they're just being bailed out. People are doing stupid things. They're just getting bailed out. And that to me made no sense. I'm probably a little too idealistic in that regard, where I think life should be how it should be instead of how it is. And, I think maybe Bitcoiners in general, maybe we have a little bit of that too much in us, but it leads us to where we are though, which is, hey, we're going to create this world, which is the good side of the idealism. And so that to me was like, I didn't really go all in until 2020, whereas, okay, I'm getting rid of all these altcoins. I'm figuring out when I can convert all of them to Bitcoin. And like, this is the only thing that matters. And I started slowly getting rid of my real estate holdings, some of them, and properties, and my team that I had. I started, getting rid of people. I was like, hey, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here anymore, type of stuff, because I need to be in Bitcoin. I don't know what this means, but I could just feel the calling and the push towards being in Bitcoin full time, not even knowing what it meant, but I needed to push this thing because the red versus blue political stuff, there's no way that's not going to happen. We saw Obamacare, what happened then 10 years before that, when they admittedly rammed it down our throats, and they admitted it afterward. I mean, we have tape of them admitting that after. I mean, you can go on down the list, and it's both sides.
It's two puppets controlled basically by the same body. Absolutely exactly. Right.
Exactly.
A couple of thoughts.
It's truly remarkable. We have how it's happening and what's happening. So we, I'm seeing this and I'm like, okay, the money is the thing underpinning all of it, obviously. And that's the thing that needs to change, or else this whole red and blue thing, all this stuff, Occupy Wall Street, the Tea Party, they were the same thing. They were the two sides of the same coin, yet we were told that they were different. And that's where when you start seeing following the money, that's when everything starts becoming clear and understanding what's actually happening. So, fast forward to 2020, 2021, like, okay, it's becoming more and more obvious. And 2022 comes around and I start getting active on Twitter. I found Bitcoin Twitter somehow. I was never active on Twitter really that much. Like 10 years, like right when it came out, I was active on it, like politically in 2010 or something like that. And then I left all that. I was like, hey, I got to go do my own thing. I got to focus on myself. And leaving hockey around that time, 2011, 2012, my head was starting to get banged around a little bit. And I was 24, 25. And I was like, hey, I was playing single A, double A, and then triple A hockey. It was, right there before the NHL. And it was just like, okay, I could keep doing this and getting my head bashed in a sense. And I was a physical player. I knew that if I kept going down this road, I was going to have more problems. So I retired. I hung them up and again, true Bitcoiner fashion of kind of seeing the patterns and seeing like, where's this going to play out in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years type of thing. And so I stopped. I just retired at my peak, I guess you could say. And that's where that kind of launched into, I need to focus. That 2012 election was where I was like, I need to focus on myself individually, worrying about myself, because me worrying about politics and all these other people in the world, that ain't going to do anything for me. So that's where it became very evident. I need to focus on me, investing, making money, understanding money. And so all the 2010s for me were understanding that game and figuring that out and realizing, wow, this game is completely rigged. And you have to put yourselves on the side of the Fed in essence, in a way, and be your own bank. And then Bitcoin comes and then takes that all out on top of what you already learned. So it's wild to see that. And then 2022, I start meeting people online in Bitcoin Twitter. I'm like, wow, these people do exist that understand what's going on. And I started meeting, Larry Lepard and people on Twitter. And then I started meeting them. The Pacific Bitcoin 2022 was my first in-person conference. Met Aladdin at Bitcoin Trading Cards, actually like a week after the conference. Didn't even meet him at the conference, but I connected with so many people at the conference. They hooked me up with him because I was into children's education. I have 4 little kids and, writing little kids books and like things like that. And all these things I was working on. And so we got hooked up, and then I lead now, marketing stuff with, all things marketing, I guess. So.
Hey y'all, are you need a Bitcoin? You looking for a way to safely and securely store your Bitcoin? Check out the Bitcoin Advisors. These Bitcoiners are professionals that will provide you peace of mind so you can sleep soundly at night knowing your Bitcoin is safe. Remember to tell them Zoom Out sent you. So there's a lot of things in there that I wanted to touch on. One, we have a similar journey because I was the 2018 class also and didn't really get it until that 2020-ish kind of thing, and that Black Swan in 2020 kind of changed everything. And you're right. Right and left does not solve it. And there's an old comedian, Bill Hicks, I don't know if you're familiar with. He would always say jokes like, hey, I agree with the puppet on the left side. I agree with the puppet on the right side. But they're the same. Hey, they're the same guy controlling the same puppet. You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter in that. So we need something to solve for the issues that isn't a table tennis, ping pong back and forth, just garnering more power back and forth. But one question I had for you, you mentioned Kiyosaki, and I read a few of his books too. And how does it feel to be in before Kiyosaki? Because now he's a big guy. It's kind of like how I had, I listened to Preston Pish for years, the Investor podcast. And then I started getting into Bitcoin. And then a year or so later, it's like Preston starts doing the Bitcoin thing. And now look at him, right?
Yeah.
How does it feel to be in before Kiyosaki?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely. Honestly, Tim, like it's humbling. Like the teacher, what is it saying? Like the mentor becomes the mentee, or vice versa, or whatever. It's definitely humbling, and and that's when you really realize that Bitcoin's not an IQ test; it's a humility test, and it's not person someone being smarter or not. It's just straight humility, and that to me is really just goes to show you again, like you have to be able to learn, unlearn, and then relearn. And it shows and that's why anyone who does change, like a Preston or like a Kiyosaki, especially the older you are, I think the older you are, like I give you more clout because you've lived longer in this old system, and it's harder for you to change. And it's not because of exactly. And it's not like the stupid, hey, boomer stuff. Like I can't stand that stuff. it's like, it's just like, it's a fact. Like they've been here longer in that system, right? So a 75-year-old is going to have a tougher time, like a Kiyosaki, changing than a 15 or 25-year-old. And so for someone like that to be able to change and like unlearn, boy, oh boy, I give those people so much credit. So it's very humbling to see that, like you said, and that's the whole like kill your heroes type of thing. And it exposes people for who they are. But a lot of the people, it's just like they're on a journey too, just like we were. So I think that's the cool part, where it's a humbling thing, and being open to like, so yeah.
A lot more preconceptions that have to be worked out. Absolutely.
Yes.
And actually, shout out to my father, who was the one who kind of nudged me to get into Bitcoin in the first place.
No way.
Wow. Retired farmer saying, "Hey, how about this?"
There you go. Well, that makes sense then. He's a farmer. Yeah, exactly.
Right. He's a farmer. He's farming corn. He's a corn farmer, right?
Exactly. That's
so you. We got all the way up to the point where you joined BTC trading cards.
Yes.
For the listener, can you kind of let's pivot and kind of talk about what that is, and then how that all kind of came around, if you could.
Yeah. So we, met right after Pacific Bitcoin 2022, got hooked up just by all the connections, which again are the point of the conferences. And community, as your father would know, community is a massive thing. In any survival situation, community is the biggest thing. It's not gold or Bitcoin or guns or, anything like that. It's community. It's the people around you that you have, the network that you can use it when. Exactly. It's when you fall short on something, they're there to pick you up, or whatever you're deficient on. So that to me is a point of Bitcoin conferences. I rarely watch the actual speakers. I'm always trying to talk to people and network. And that's where I met a bunch of people there, and met Aladdin right after that, who just released the Series 1 at Bitcoin, or Pacific Bitcoin 2022. And they were giving them away. They were giving the packs away. And now, ironically, those packs and boxes are, sold out like a month or two after they caught on, and they sold out like by January, a couple months later. And they're worth
literal trading cards. They're
literal trading cards. Yeah,
I did baseball cards. I traded baseball cards back in the day.
Yeah. So they're actual trading cards, and they actually have like, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And then on the back, it'll talk about that thing, or explain what it is that's going on in that card. So we have we have different resource cards, different companies.
In art.
Correct. So it's the flagship, series, the original series is called Orange Pill in a Pack.
Love that.
Yeah. Yep.
So you guys have been expanding that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So they started taking off, and then we released Series 2 last year. We're working on Series 3 for this year. Been doing some conference packs and stuff like that. And yeah, people have been loving it, like young, old, like you said, like older generations that are like, hey, I used to collect these when I was a kid, or the younger generations have been loving them. A great way to orange pill people and incept it, the true Bitcoiner way of like the Trojan horse, right? So people are having fun and just seeing, and the collectability, which makes it a good and bad thing. The collectability is great for many reasons: scarcity, people buying them and wanting to buy them. But it makes it tough, because you want to orange pill the masses, but when you have people coming in and trying to buy a bunch of them, or then it's in a few hands, right? So we want to get out to more people. So you're trying to ride this line of profitability and also getting orange pilling education out to the masses in a different way. So yes, they are physical cards. We kind of joke that like they're physical NFTs. They're what NFTs want to be. Yeah. So they're actually what an NFT should be, or what they want to be. That's this. So yeah, and the collectability has been unbelievable. Like the Series 1 boxes go for like $10,000, or they were, I've seen them go for like half a Bitcoin, stuff like that. So we sold one at BitBlock Boom for like, I don't know, 10 to 30 million sats or something like that. I can't even remember, just like a month ago. So anyway, the collectability.
I'm guessing your target audience is probably not as much kids, but younger adults, maybe, would you say?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of runs the gamut. We've seen literally all ages in the card so far, like just loving it. So it doesn't, it's, I don't know if there's one specific age group, but we've seen literally all ages. Yep.
So you, in addition to BTC trading cards, you also have this playable character. You were talking earlier about being a network and like the social layer. This kind of furthers this idea, and I love this. I do a lot of this on my videos for the channel, where you try and humanize Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many people that look at Bitcoin and they just see a number on the screen that it's this many dollars. They see an asset. They see, Ponzi scheme or whatever, tulips or whatever, but they don't actually see that it's a tool for humans to interact. You know what I mean? So tell us a little bit about your playable characters.
So yeah, I started doing 4 years ago. I'm trying to think. 2020. 4 years ago. I started Freedom Isn't Free show, and that was during the pandemic. And it was just like, okay, I got to do something different. Something digital. Did that, was more real estate related and more. It was right when that time period I was talking about earlier, where I was kind of like, all right, what am I doing here? I need to actually transition. Like, oh boy, this is not good. So I got like 10 or 15 episodes in, and then I stopped because I was having a lot of just cognitive dissonance and a lot of just like issues in my own head of like, okay, what am I doing? And so I ended up kind of stopping that in 2020. Wish I would have just kept going and morphed it just naturally, but because of the real estate nature of what I was doing, we were actually out and about doing a lot of things. So I really probably couldn't keep going, and so that turned into a year ago, or a little over a year ago, into Playable Character Show, and doing with Bitcoin though, and having Bitcoiners on. So I think we're 50 some episodes in right now, 51 or 52 or something like that episodes in,
Yeah.
and just talking to people that I've met at conferences, and just kind of going through, like you said, all the connections, the network of people, and very similar to what you do, obviously, telling stories. Stories are how humans learn. So hey, how can we tell stories and learn about Bitcoin and share adoption stories? Those to me are the biggest things that we can use, and the tools we can use to orange pill people, whether it's Bitcoin trading cards or podcasts, people sharing stories, books. We have to have all these mediums and all these ways to do it. And to me, it was just an extension of, okay, I'm already doing this. And also it's something that we use as a marketing tool for Bitcoin trading cards to get that name out there more. And so we can hopefully sell more cards, have more awareness for the cards, and orange pill more people ultimately. And then,
Well, one of the things that I've learned as an educator, I spent most of my life as an educator, and elementary education is like, we all don't learn the same way. There are so many different ways to learn, and one of the things I love about that is that you're having that bite size. It's art, it's artistic, but it's educational, it's visual. I'll listen to podcasts and audiobooks all day long, but that doesn't mean everybody else learns that way. You know what I'm saying? So to have the cards, and then also have this playable character interview where you're having that kind of physical connection, like you said, you're telling a story. Stories are the best way for people to learn, especially the younger generation. You're not just hitting them with like non-narrative factual stuff. You know what I'm saying?
yes,
I dig
yep,
that.
it really is. It's the best way. I mean,
So go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say that it really is the best way to learn. It's story selling, right? I mean, you have to tell stories. You can't just tell people. You can lead horses to water, but you can't make people drink. They have to sell themselves, and stories are what help do that. So it's huge.
So you getting in about 2018. I guess we're not OGs per se,
Mm-hmm.
but we've been through a cycle, or we're in our
Yep.
cycles, into multiple cycles now. Um, Bitcoin adoption. Because what are we doing here? With my channel, I'm trying to help adoption through education. What are
Yep.
you
Yep.
doing? You're trying to help adoption through education because we believe in this, right? Uh, are you seeing adoption? Maybe not so much with the trading cards, but in general, are you seeing the adoption that I hate to say expect? But what are your thoughts on the current state of adoption? We're seeing a lot of positives come out of government. We're seeing a lot of come out of just industries like mining and renewables and all that. Um, where do you see the state of adoption today?
Boy, I mean, obviously the ETFs just came out. It's a big thing lately. I know there's a lot of people
Yeah.
talking about Qatar or Qatar, however you say that country name. There's a lot of things about countries mining things. I think Venezuela was in the news recently.
Oh
There's a
man.
lot of countries actually that have been in the news or linked to Bitcoin for varying reasons. And I was just watching something the other day about, I think Natalie Brunel had someone on from Meta, and they were just saying like, yeah, I think next year they're going to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. it's just a matter of time. I think adoption, it seems weird. Like, I know for people like us, you feel like we should be much further along, and it seems so obvious at this point. But then you have to remember, like, okay, what were we like? It took us years to kind of really get it. Like, we got it, and then you get it, and then you really, really get it. Like, there's this journey. There's a gauntlet you have to go through. So I think it's just, we have to remember that. And I keep coming back to humility and lowering your ego and raising your humility. And because that's what Bitcoin is. It's a humility test, and you're constantly being humbled. And whether it's, I remember it was I don't know if it was Tone Vase or Adam Meister, or it was somebody, and they were just saying, like, I think it was Tone. He was just saying in Dallas, he was like, yeah, I believe it was Dallas or Vegas, maybe his conference, but he was like, hey, I was doing content a long time ago, and then a lot of you guys came in. You're like way better than I am, so I had to like reinvent myself and like do different things. So no matter who you are, you're an OG, or no matter what it is, eventually Tom Brady, he will leave FTX stuff, and then he'll be a Bitcoiner someday, like a true Bitcoiner. Like, it changes people. He'll be back. Someone will be back that'll be way bigger than us, and they will crowd us out of the market in that sense, or whoever it might be, and we're gone, or whatever it is, and you're humbled again for the millionth time. And that's where you really start to see that, I think, and that's where the adoption is there. It's happening. We see it with walled addresses. We see it with mining, all the fundamentals. You think of like the true basics of investing, and we see it all the time with the different actual fundamentals of Bitcoin, the hash rate continually climbing every single day, right. The network growing. It's there. I mean, the network was growing even when the price came down, obviously, to 15,000. It was still growing. All these metrics were growing. So the adoption's always been there. It's going to, I think, probably melt our faces off at some point here in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18, 24 months, where there's only so much to go around, and the only thing that can change is price. And I think people are going to be really blown away, literally, at what can happen in an asset like this. We've never seen anything like it. Obviously, there's no other asset on earth that humans have ever experienced like this, and no one's ready for it. It breaks all the models. We can throw out all the cliches, but it truly does. And I think that's where the adoption, we're a country or two away. We're right there on the precipice of, Russia, using it as a unit of account, or, measuring their oil and Bitcoin, things like that. So we're only a couple things away, or one or two things away, where things just rip people's faces off. And that's where none of us can predict it, though. Is that 2 years from now, or is it tomorrow? I mean, it could be any time, and we just don't know. So
I kind of keep thinking, there's the phrase in Bitcoin that is harsh, but I think has merit. It's, you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. And I'm not a maxi in the sense that, GFY or whatever, or have fun staying or whatever. But that one, you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. I think there's some merit to that. And I think in terms of adoption, it kind of goes back to what you were saying about, like, can't teach an old dog new tricks, like people have stuff ingrained in them. It takes a long time, but it also has to do a lot with that humility aspect that you talked about.
Yes.
And it's interesting because fiat, in a way, it's more of a proof of stake kind of concept, right? You don't have to work for it. But I see a lot of people, maybe from your hockey background, where you had to work to get to where you wanted to go, right? Probably from watching my father farm. Like, if you want to grow crops, you have to put in the work, right? That's humbling. Right. And maybe, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. Maybe there's a mixture of humility with proof of work that allows those people to get quicker to adoption. You know what I'm saying? But we've been all not customized, but we've been all made to the point where it's so easy and there's nothing we have to do. We're so modern that for those people to see this change, this revolutionary change, it's going to take them a lot longer. That's kind of my take on that. You care to riff on that?
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Honestly, I agree, Tim. I mean, I think that's something that we like project our own being onto everyone, right? Like, why isn't everyone seeing what I'm seeing? And it's like, everyone's different. Everyone's got different experiences, different intelligence levels, different humility levels. And so that's just nature. And I think you're right. Like, the early adopters, the people that are searching for it, or they are predestined to kind of see it because of the way they're built or their personality or whatever it is. Yeah, a lot of these people are in now or whatever. And it's a small segment of society where most of society is caught up in the fiat matrix, or they just don't have the time to look for it or whatever it is. There's like all these reasons. But it is the humility aspect, and it's also, I go back to like the Revolutionary War was only fought by a couple percent of the people. And it's just like, well, we have this country, 100% of people live with this system now, but only a couple percent were really like, no, like we're not doing this. Well, that's Bitcoiners. There's a couple percent of people who are like, no, we're not standing for this. And when you think about it, that's how all society's built. Genghis Khan comes in, you have bad people or whatever, like they affect society just like a good person can affect society. And so you have someone one day gets up and says, hey, I'm going to go do this. Well, that's the ripple effect or the butterfly effect that changes society in the course of human nature forever. Well, Bitcoiners are doing that and choosing to do it in a positive way, where you have other people out there who are choosing to do it in a negative way. But it's like nothing's predetermined. So much of us go through life thinking like robotically, like I'm on a hamster wheel, or be told what do what you're told to do and follow the rules and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there's a lot of people out there that do whatever they want, and it can be good or bad, and they make their own rules because there are no rules at the end of life, at the end of the world. Like there is no rule. Like Earth is Earth, and like so. Anyway, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
You made it interesting. Yeah, that's true. But you made a good point in there that like it takes a small portion of the population to make changes. I even remember listening to, I want to say Breedlove on a podcast years ago, where he pointed out how like something as simple as changing an ingredient in a grocery store. Like in England, you have a certain percentage of Islamics, right? But there's Islamic products in the English grocery stores. But once you get up to that 8 to 10% of the population, now it's available for everybody. Now it's accepted by everywhere. And that's that kind of, I don't know what law or theory that was called, but that kind of idea that once you get to that tipping point of population, then it flourishes. And yes. And when is that? 2, 5, 10 years, 20, who knows? But there's undeniable truth that we're going that way. Right.
Yeah, more pain. And that's the other part of this answer too, where I forgot that aspect of it again, where you have a large segment of society who, again, the early adopters, it's not that we're special. It's not that we're genius. We just, for whatever reason, we're predisposed. Maybe it was something that happened in our life before, or we read a lot of history, or there's just something implanted inside you. Like you're the Paul Revere, like yelling the British are coming, or most people were asleep, and that's just the way life goes. Call it fate or whatever it is. You have a lot of people who need to be kicked in the face, unfortunately, 100 times until they're realizing, oh, I'm in a bar fight and I might die right now. Well, that takes long. Some people realize right away. Some people start the fight. Some people realize very quickly, 1 or 2 people in that bar realize very quickly, oh man, this guy is about to swing at me. Those are probably the early adopters, the people that are like, oh man, coming from a hockey guy that, gotten his fair share of fights. I wasn't a fighter, but I gotten, dozens of fights over the years. It's like you're in it, and like I'm either gonna get hurt or I could die or whatever, and then things change very rapidly. This is a whole different rabbit hole you go down. You have the Jason Lowrys of the world who wrote books or theses off of this, basically, where hey, if I'm dropping a bomb, like it doesn't matter what you believe or what your thought on climate science is. It don't matter, because truth is truth, and that bomb's got a minute until it's gonna hit the ground or whatever it is. They're really fascinating theories, and when you kind of break things down into this, where you have the early adopters, the guys kind of leaning back, or maybe it's like you're about, tempers are flaring, and the early adopter says, whoa, like this is going to escalate. And then maybe again, there's another 2, 3, 4 people in that bar that can see once the guy kind of flinches. Now I think I'm in the fight. Then 90 people out of the 100 people in the bar think, oh, what? I got hit 10 times in the face. I'm laying in a pool of my own blood. Then they realize they're in the fight. That's kind of where we're going in the world. I mean, it's unfortunate, but you see like the Canadian truckers, you see people getting freedom stripped left and right. 90 people out of that 100 in the bar don't have any clue what's going on. Unfortunately, they're lying in a pool of their own blood. And I've never explained it quite like this before. I've explained this theory many times, but not quite like this, not this intense, I guess, or graphic, unfortunately. So sorry to your viewers, but that's where we're going, unfortunately. And I can't stand it. People like us are like, hey, like we don't want anyone to get hurt. Like we can minimize collateral damage. Just stop now. So anyway, before I dig myself in the hole anymore, that's
writing down possible title of podcast: Bitcoin is a bar fight with Brandon Gentile.
Pool of own blood. Yeah, exactly. It's
I love that. No, that's a great analogy. I mean, pain is the best teacher, and some
it is.
people, the whole fight or flight.
Yeah.
You could generalize that to, are you aware? I also like to kind of liken it to Bitcoin is a truth machine, and some people are
Mhm.
more or better predisposed to accept or realize or visualize or whatever, perceive the truth, right?
Yes.
And oh man, that's tough.
It
I
is.
want to I
It's
want to
oh.
I want to just pivot just one other way. So you mentioned some nation state adoption. You
Mhm.
mentioned some mining, some other things. What do you think is going to be like one of the big catalysts? Maybe over let's just say the next 1 or 2 years. I'm not really concerned about price because price is going to take care of
Right.
itself.
Yeah, I know. It's and that's an important thing. Like it's, you and I can kind of brush over the pricing, but I know the average person is
It's
like,
important
we all generally come in for the price, but it's important to highlight to the average
that it's
person though too, or maybe someone coming in that, yeah, the price does take care of itself. It's just fiat collapsing. It's opposite of what you think it is when you first come in, right? So it's not.
yeah,
It's just so that's an important thing to say, but we don't need to talk about it
very
necessarily.
very important.
Um, yeah, and so honestly, like to me, the thing I'm obsessed with lately, and I know a fair amount about mining, and I'm not a mining expert, but to me, I can't I can't even grasp like what people are going to start realizing once they really see at scale, like, oh, I can mine Bitcoin in my home with my space heater or my hot water heater, or Shell just, or Marathon just put a Bitcoin miner on their oil rig, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
That to me is so mind-blowing that stuff's even happening, and like, and the narrative's like opposite of that in a way still, like just kind of generally. That to me, that could play out in the next year or two, and the whole thing, I mean, you could see all the altcoins, you could see everything just collapse overnight in a sense, just because people all of a sudden, like this bar fight analogy, like all of a sudden one day people just wake up and kind of realize there's something, like you said, a black swan event or a Michael Saylor type of event, something happens where people are just like, whoa, like what just happened? And we can't predict it, we don't know. But to me, like the mining, and because that right now, for all intents and purposes, there's a lot of people on the, we'll say the American left, or kind of the Marxist, kind of communist leanings in the NGOs, or these world alphabet agency groups. They're against it, or they're for green energy, but they're against Bitcoin and things like that. So a complete
well,
like
they're for their
cognitive
own power.
dissonance. Yeah,
Therefore,
exactly.
they're against. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
real quick, so the altcoins in this bar fight scenario, they're the ones that see the fight and run out the back door.
yeah, yeah, exactly. 100%. 100%. And it's, yeah, you could take this analogy so many different ways. It's,
I love
yeah.
that analogy. I'm gonna start.
But my,
I'm gonna just stew on this after this podcast. I'm just gonna think about this in depth. Maybe make an article out of it. I'll make sure
yeah.
to give you a hat.
Oh my gosh. But
So,
yeah, honestly, mining, Tim, I think mining, like the mining, the clean energy, like when people start realizing that, and people start meshing that in their worlds of, wait, I'm for clean stuff, but I'm against this. Like that doesn't make sense. I think things like that are really starting to come to a head, and really going to start changing and flipping minds. And like again, this bar fight analogy, people are going to start realizing they're going to fight much quicker, and they're going to be like, oh wait, these things are compatible. They're not actually diametrically opposed. They're the
right,
same. They actually work in conjunction. So it brings together right
it's
and
gonna
left and
create
all these things.
a lot of cognitive dissonance, which
Yes,
is they're going to be their internal bar fight. You know what I mean? They're going to have to deal with that
absolutely.
on their own. And either
Absolutely.
you deal with it and learn and move forward, or you, hate to say it, get left behind in a way.
100%.
That's
I
that's
think,
great.
I think the election too, Tim, honestly, like I think the election this year is going to
Oh,
really
right.
speed up. Yeah, I think that's going to really speed up adoption too. And just whether it's RFK, Biden, I guess Vivek too, in a way, Trump seemingly starting to come around a little bit. I think you're now
Yeah.
having this dichotomy or this contrast between anti-Bitcoin and Bitcoin. And I've seen people predict it over like the last year and a half, saying 2024 will be about Bitcoin. And that's become truer by the day. I mean, I didn't believe it at that time. I was like, like, okay, there's no way. We're still a cycle or so away from that. And it's sped up every single day. It's become more and more about Bitcoin and the failure of fiat currencies. And I'm blown away. So I think it comes to a head maybe in the next 6 to 12 months of whatever happens pre-election, and then whatever happens post-election. Like there's going to be chaos probably either way after the election, no matter who wins. And I think that is going to keep exposing the media, the legacy agencies, the legacy, media, legacy alphabet agencies, all these people are being exposed now left and right, day by day seemingly. And I think that's where people on both sides, 90+% of humans and Americans are like, what is going on here? Like, I don't hate my neighbor. We don't hate each other. Like, why are we being told these things? That I think is really going to start coming to a head the next 6 to 12 months.
Well, and also I want to back up on a statement I made where price doesn't matter. Price does matter because as Bitcoin keeps increasing, that voter base is going to be more powerful and
Yes, true.
more, of course, be reckoned with than it already is. Man, Brandon,
Absolutely.
we're coming up on time. This has been amazing. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your insights. I love the BTC trading cards idea and the playable characters podcast. Is there anywhere else that we need to send people? Do you got any links that you would like me to send them to? And any here's your handoff.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on so much, Tim. It was an absolute blast. It's not, you don't always get to talk about stuff like this. So I appreciate it. Brandon _Gentile is my Twitter or X. Obviously, BTC-TC.com is our Bitcoin trading cards website. So go there. You can catch me on Twitter, BTC trading cards on Twitter as well. Go follow them, the company handle there. But yeah, that's, check out the Playable Character Show as well. It's similar to what you're doing, Tim. And the more education, the better. And the more of us overwhelm the system. We need the 3%. We need to overwhelm the system with positivity and answers and solutions. So the more people are doing stuff like this, it's just kudos to you. Everyone that's putting content out there, we have to have more of it. And I just thank you for having me on today. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. I always say, don't buy Bitcoin, learn it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
The more you learn about it, absolutely.
Well
Brandon
said.
Gentile, thank you for joining me on Zoom Out. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Tim. Take care.